The family relationships in Avatar: The Last Airbender play a significant role in this series. It doesn't quite easily come to mind, but actually every single main character has some issues in this regard. Aang didn't have parents, and the man who was like a father to him passed away when Aang was just 12. Katara and Sokka lost their mom, and their dad was often away. Toph's parents didn't really get her, and Zuko, you know...
And suffering will be your teacher.
Each character's family background shapes them crucially, but today I want to focus more on the relationships in the Fire Nation royal family, because they are the most complex, and they are the key to understanding how Fire Nation became what it became. The Fire Nation royals, starting with Sozin, shared a significant commonality. They lacked nurturing relatives who would guide them instead of exploiting them for their own ambitions. This and other things contributed to a cycle of poor parenting within the family. Let's begin with Zuko and Azula. Like any children, they competed for their parents' love and approval. To earn it, they had to meet their parents' expectations. However, their parents had dramatically different worldviews, making it hard to please both simultaneously. So they naturally gravitated toward the parent closer to them at the time. Zuko leaned toward Ursa, while Azula favored Ozai. Still, they both wanted recognition from the other parents. We've always known how important it was for Zuko to gain his father's acceptance, and in the end we discovered that Azula too wanted love and acceptance from her mother. Now about Ozai and Iroh. Their father, Azulan, was a strict, military-minded strategist who valued power and success. As revealed in the TV series and the book The Legacy of Fire Nation, Ozai and Iroh had their own sibling competition. They both tried to meet their father's expectations and win his approval. However, Ozai wasn't successful in this regard. Azulon favored Iroh, as he was the firstborn and was way better in terms of the military than his brother. This contributed significantly to Ozai's turn towards darkness. Another factor was that Ozai, in a way, followed his father's example. After the tragic loss of Iroh's son, Ozai approached Azulon with a request to name him his successor instead of Iroh. In response, Azulon ordered Ozai to take the life of his own son Zuko as punishment. Azulon showed no mercy, so Ozai killing Azulon was kinda following his father's example. Not only that, Ozai followed the example of punishment. We see that when he dueled Zuko in Agni Kai and banished him, all to teach a lesson. Yeah, the true Azulon's successor. Iroh was no different from Azulon or Ozai. We see that in the episode Zuko Alone, when he jokes about burning down the entire city of Ba Sing Se. However, after the tragic loss of his son, Iroh went through a profound transformation. He began to see the world differently and noticed that his nephew Zuko was heading down the same destructive path as his younger brother Ozai once did. In a sense, history was repeating itself since Azula and Zuko were like Iroh and Ozai. Azula was more in the condition of Iroh because she was the favorite child of her father, while Zuko was kinda in the position of Ozai. Iroh understood that Zuko might become like his brother, so he needed to break this cycle. Each new generation of Fire Lords repeated the behavior of those who came before them. But let's rewind to Azulon. While we have limited information about his past, we can make some conclusions. His father Sozin was strict and merciless. Also, knowing that Sozin was paranoid about world domination and the war, we can assume that he didn't spend much time with his son and probably wasn't a good father. We see Azulon acting similarly to his father. He had no hesitation about killing his grandson, just like Sozin didn't care about killing his once best friend Roku. And as far as I'm concerned, Sozin's father was kinda similar to that behavior. And who knows how many other Fire Lords before that were like this. Now, Iroh once told Aang a fundamental thing about today's topic.
Perfection and power are overrated. I think you are very wise to choose happiness and love.
Iroh was talking about Aang, but I believe it reflects his perspective on his family. Every Fire Lord, from Sozin to Ozai, desired power and also seemed to value perfection. A prime example is Azula, a prodigy who aimed for perfection, likely because her father wanted her to be that way. Azulon, who was also seen as perfect, may have encouraged his children to pursue perfection, possibly under the influence of Sozin. this created a cycle that was accidentally disrupted by Iroh. Also, the royal family have strictness in common, but what really made the Fire Lords bad parents were their expectations. You see, most parents have hopes and dreams for their kids, and kids often try to meet those hopes. Take Toph, for example. Her folks wanted her to be quiet and well-behaved, but that just wasn't her style, which created a huge gap between them. Now with the Fire Lords, it's kinda the same deal, but worse. Ozai wanted his kids to be tough, strong, and power-hungry like him. So Zuko and Azula did their best to live up to that. But the real problem wasn't Ozai having these expectations, but how he pushed his kids to be something they weren't, and something he wanted them to be. He saw them as tools for his ambitions, not as individuals with their own thoughts and desires. But it doesn't mean that only bad parents have expectations of their children. It's just good parents realize that their expectations are their problem. They understand that their kids don't have to live exactly how they want them to. This is precisely what Iroh did with Zuko. He always gave Zuko the freedom to make his own choices and live life on his terms. He offered guidance and advice, but never forced Zuko to live a certain way. Gyatso likely similarly treated Aang. When Aang was revealed to be the Avatar, the other monks pushed him to train constantly. At the same time, Gyatso realized that Aang needed time to figure things out on his own and didn't pressure him. The reason Aang left the temple was because of the monks' misguided approach to parenting. Gyatso and Iroh, unlike many others, weren't strict and approached parenthood with humor and understanding. Every Fire Lord since Sozin was, in some relevant sense, a victim of bad parenting. Except their parents, there was never a person around them who could guide them. This doesn't excuse their actions, but it highlights their parents' role in shaping their destinies. In Legacy of Fire Nation, Iroh expresses his sense of responsibility for not guiding Ozai when he had the chance. And here arises another issue. People often end up hurting their children or others without intending to do so. When I recently rewatched Avatar, I noticed that Roku somewhat isolated himself from Sozin. When Sozin shared his grand plans to expand the Empire, Roku didn't want to listen. Over the years, Roku didn't seem to try to help Sozin see the absurdity of his plans. This unintentional negligence played a part in shaping Sozin's path. Ursa too didn't step in to help Azula when she saw darkness in her. Instead, she spent more time with Zuko, leaving Azula alone with Ozai. As a result, Azula learned to live from such a monster, which significantly impacted her, and it turned her into a similar kind of monster. However, Ursa had her reasons. She viewed her life in the palace as a prison and found solace in Zuko, a black sheep like herself. Similarly, Iroh found his rescue in Zuko and somewhat overlooked Azula. It's not about blaming them, it's about recognizing that parents are in many ways like grown-up children. They don't know for sure what's right and what's wrong. They don't have all the answers to the universe and make mistakes affecting their children. They just try to figure out this life as we do, and that's all. People are heavily influenced by their parents, passed down through generations. When they're provided examples of bad behavior, it forms a cycle of bad parenting, which can only be broken accidentally, as in Iroh's case, or by the positive influence of someone else, as seen with Zuko. Once a new positive cycle starts, it can continue until someone else breaks it again. For me, that's what Avatar: The Last Airbender is about.